So I'm sure you've probably heard that the Umbrella Academy Season 4 was terrible. Everyone hated it. Even Moist Critical made a video about how bad it was. I think it started off very strong. It then suddenly ended out of nowhere, and I was like, wow, I guess that's that. It was okay, but I wish it was longer, and there was quite a lot of stuff I didn't like. So generally, if all the other seasons are like 10s out of 10s, this would be, I don't know, like an average CW show, which is like, oh, it's perfectly serviceable. That's what I would say. But I wish it was longer. That's my main takeaway. Let's start with the positive stuff. So firstly, I did like the stuff at the beginning where we're basically following the characters 6 years after the ending of season 3, which is to just see what their lives are like without powers. Because, the big reveal at the end of last season that these characters have lost their powers. And usually this is a terrible storyline. And I'm like, oh, great. The powers are the coolest thing of the show. Why are we getting rid of them? But you know what? It started off okay. But then it went on for a bit too long. And I was like, Even, I think in the second last episode of this season, even in the final episode of this season, they're still struggling to use their powers. And their powers have changed and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't like this. The powers were cool. Why are we changing them and getting rid of them? But anyway, this is meant to be the positive stuff, okay? It was cool, okay? We have Luther being a stripper. That was cool. We saw the Diego and Lila having children and celebrating a big birthday party, and all the siblings are going and showing up. And it was at this, like, I don't know what you call it, an inside play area thing. That was like really cool. I like that. Cute family gathering. I liked how Klaus was like living with Allison and had like a good relationship with her daughter. That was like kind of cute. I think Fives being in the CIA was like a perfect fit. Makes sense. I think he was also previous in the CIA, so it just makes perfect sense. Who else was there? I guess Victor's was the weakest. Victor's was like, I think he was running his own bar or something, and I don't know, we didn't really focus on it that much. It didn't really feel like it felt in place with his character or anything, but I don't know. It was fine. It was a bit weak though. Another thing I was kind of dreading at the beginning stuff was, alongside, I guess, them losing their powers, was the fact that the season ended with Allison basically being a villain, but then kind of doing one last redeeming thing, which is to reset the universe and reconfigure it in a way that I guess everyone was kind of happy, except for Luther, who lost Sloane, I guess, but we don't really talk about that this season because she was never brought up, but that's okay. We don't need to address everything. But the big worry was that, oh my gosh, we're going to get this awkward scene where we're going to have to like somehow bring Allison back into the story and it's going to be all awkward and stuff. But you know what? I think the show did it really well, where it's like, we got a nice, really long time skip, okay, 6 years, where everyone's in a different stage in their life. They've had a long time to kind of cope with all the bad stuff that was done to them by Allison and their dad and everything. And even Allison kind of understands that no one wants to kind of see her at this point. So she's hesitant to like go and reunite with them, and then the big birthday happens with Lila and Diego's daughter, and it's like all the families getting back together, and Allison wants to take Klaus there and her daughter, and she like stays in the car, and I'm like, okay, this is like cute, Allison is here but she's not going in. And then the stressed Lila, the mother who's organizing this party, comes out and she like wants to take a break from the party, and this is all like descriptively real cool stuff. Okay, I like this a lot. And this is like the inciting incident that like brings Allison back into the story and like brings all the family together, where she's like hesitant to go into the party, but she goes in and then they talk and it's like awkward, but at least they've talked and they're getting past it. And I think they basically handled Allison's reintegration into the story really well. I like that a lot. It felt very natural and I was dreading it. So good job. Other positive things, which I think are contrary to what most people took away from this season, I really liked the Lila and Fives romance storyline, which it was completely unexpected. I did not think that Fives would have a romantic storyline, and I did not think that him and Lila would make a good match, but you know what? They were great. I think that it felt very believable. I enjoyed the like moral dilemma of never like getting teleported into some other timeline and being stuck there for who knows how long, at least 7 years, I think is what it was, or some ridiculous amount of years, and then just being like, what do we do? Like, do we move on with our lives? Do we have a romantic thing, or do we avoid it? And it was kind of cute. I like that storyline a lot. Some of the best stuff in this season. Another positive thing, the VFX for Ben and Jennifer was really cool. I was kind of shocked because the only real VFX thing I remember standing out was in season 1, where they had, I don't remember what his name was. Was it an ape or a monkey, or are they the same thing? I don't know, whatever. The monkey guy, the butler guy. That was really well done. I was like, wow, they can do like animal effects on a TV show. That's crazy. But other than that, I don't feel like they've really focused on VFX as like their number one thing. But this, like the creature stuff at the end with the monstrosity of Ben and Jennifer and them merging together into this thing, it was really well done. I was kind of really surprised by how well they did it. Then 2 more positive things. I mean, we're going to get to it. My big complaint is kind of about the ending of this season. But one thing that the ending did really well, I think, was that it tied up, well, not tied up. It's kind of simplistic the way they did it, but I liked it, which is that Sir Reginald Hargreaves, okay, the dad that's always come across as very arrogant and thinking that he knows best and is kind of the cause for all these issues. In the end, he comes to this realization that he's a very hubristic man, and his hubris has led to like the destruction of the universe. And I don't know, it was at least a cute wrap up for one character. Okay, of all the characters that were, I think, completely failed in their wrap up, I think at least Sir Reginald Hargreaves had a decent, quick wrap up. So I like that, and it was well handled. And then the last good thing I can say about the show is that the shot, which I used on my media list on Twitter, if you follow me, of Lila stepping out of the train at the last second and leaving her family behind to like go to the other timeline. I thought that shot was really cool, where it's like you think that she's going to stay there, and at the last second she like steps through the doors and the doors shut behind her, and like, this is sick. So good directing, good stuff, good acting in that scene. That was a fun scene. Even if plot-wise, I don't think it made any sense, but it was cool. Now, I think that's literally everything positive I could probably say about this. I guess maybe the performances were good. Okay, they were always good. We love the performances. There were some funny bits, I'm sure. But everything else is basically negative. And I think all of this, basically every issue that there is with this season, that I have with this season at least, all stems from the incredibly short length. It was 6 episodes, whereas a usual season is 10. Now, I don't know anything behind the scenes. I didn't look into it. I haven't heard anything, but it's so strange to me because my understanding is the Umbrella Academy is very popular. Now, maybe it's fallen off more recently, but I have no idea. But I don't understand why they would want to wrap this up so quickly. Like, it didn't feel natural. It felt like, if I was to speculate, it really felt like they really just wanted to get this done and out of the way and finished. And maybe, I don't know, like, was there a big director change? I have no idea. I don't know what happened, but it should not have been 6 episodes. Like, by the time I'm at the end of episode 5, there's just so many things that still have to be wrapped up, and it felt like there was so much room to like, you still have to wait to like breathe. And like, I think the Lila and Five storyline hadn't even wrapped up at that point, or it was like really close to just wrapping up, and it felt like, how are we going to see the ramifications of this? And like, there's so many things where it's like, why are we ending here? We could do another like 7 or 8 episodes just to kind of smooth out the ending of this series and make the emotions feel like really heightened. And I don't know, it just didn't feel climactic at all, basically. Like, it's so strange. And it retroactively, when the ending happens, it just makes the rest of the season feel so weak because it just ends so quickly. So that's my biggest issue with this. And I think I was enjoying basically the whole season. I think the earliest few episodes, like 1 or 2, they're really good. Like, I like them probably as much as I like the previous episodes from previous seasons. And then the rest of it kind of fell off quite a bit, but I still was enjoying it quite a lot. And then we got the final episode, and to me, it just felt like a weird mid-season finale where they're like having all these climactic moments where the siblings are gonna sacrifice themselves to stop, because they're like the cause of the apocalypse and all these timelines. And it kind of felt like this is what you would do in a mid-season, and then like it'll be a big plot twist and maybe this isn't gonna work or something, but it all just worked. And I was like, this is like strange. Why? It's a baffling decision to write it this way, is basically what I took from this. And for it to all end, this final episode, with the worst scene in this entire show. And there's been a lot of bad scenes, okay? I do love the show, but there's been quite a few. I think every season there's like one storyline that I don't like. But basically, this is all trumped by the final scene in this entire show, which is that all the siblings, they sacrifice themselves in the end, okay? They're like, the moral dilemma is that as long as we exist in the universe, then the universe every timeline will eventually converge in apocalypse. And we are the cause of the apocalypse. Let's erase ourselves from the timeline and then make at least one sacred timeline where the universe is not destroyed. There's no apocalypse anymore. That's like the decision they make. And then at the end, what we do is we see a timeline where it's like they're in a park. It's like a really bright green park, and it's meant to be like happy and all that. And literally, like, all the characters that couldn't exist, like theoretically, because of like paradoxes or whatever, but I can parcel that away and whatever. There's like some weird paradox. They somehow sacrificing themselves, let them live within a world with paradoxes, whatever. Like, how does Claire exist? Which I think is like Allison's daughter. If Allison was never existed, whatever. There's like issues with that, but they're all living in this like little park area. And then we're like transitioning, going around the scene with the camera, like floating around. And we're seeing like all these important characters from previous seasons who are like already dead, but now we see them in the sacred timeline. They're all like happy and all in the same place in this park. And like, to me, this feels like a very ambiguous ending where it's like, is this meant to be heaven? Like, is this like everyone died and now there actually is no sacred timeline? And in reality, the sacred timeline is heaven, where like all the universes are destroyed or something. And which I think is like, at least that's somewhat interesting, but it's so ambiguous. The more likely thing is that we're just meant to assume that everything worked out and it's all just happy, and everyone somehow from all the previous seasons are just here and they're all just living happily in this park, and the sacrifice was worth it in the end because everyone's just happy. And like, I don't know. It's so weird. So terrible. I did not like this final scene. But yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, the main issue with this isn't that like it doesn't make sense or it's like aggravating. Well, I guess a little bit of the issue is that it doesn't make sense, but it's not that it's aggravating or that it's like annoying or frustrating or anything like that. It's just that like it happens, and it happens so quickly and you don't feel anything. Like, the appeal of the Umbrella Academy are definitely the emotional scenes, right? But there's just no emotion in this final scene, basically. The actual decision is like kind of interesting. Like do you sacrifice yourself for the sake of the universe, or do you keep fighting with the hope that one day you'll be able to overcome this like apocalypse? And it is kind of interesting that the show goes with the idea that the main characters are going to give up. They're going to sacrifice themselves and hope that this will create a better universe, then rather than continuing to struggle and hope that they can, through their struggles, create like the optimal utopia, you know, like create a reality without an apocalypse. It's just the decision itself is really interesting to subvert it, but you just don't feel any of the payoff because it just happened so quickly and is so left ambiguously. So anyway, that's the big issue with the show, is just like the final episode and final scene. But other than that, like throughout the series, there's a bunch of like, I guess, boring story elements. Like one of them is the payoff to the actual Jennifer incident, which is something that was being set up ever since season 1, where it's like every time they refer to like, how did Ben die? And it's like, oh, it was the Jennifer incident. And then the reveal is that just that the dad shot him like in the head. And I was like, oh, okay, that's like really lame. Jean and Jean were like the antagonists of this season. Like every season typically has like some strange, like quirky antagonists. And this time it was Jean and Jean. And I guess they were okay, but I don't know, there wasn't too much to them. I feel like all the previous ones kind of had more to them. Like I don't remember them, but was it Hazel or something? Like whoever the first two in season 1 were, like they were great. The handler or whatever in season 2, like they were great. Like there's been these really good villains in the past. Like even season 3, like Hargreaves. I guess season 3 was quite different because you had like Hargreaves and the Sparrow Academy, and they were kind of like antagonists, but they were really great. But this time, Jean and Jean didn't really do it for me, I guess. But yeah, other than that, the main like weak element is what I talked about before, which is that like the powers are gone for too long, and even when the powers come back, it's just not the same. Like for instance, Allison, she just doesn't use her rumor ability. I don't know why. And when she could have in so many situations, like when she's trying to find Klaus, she uses telekinesis to like pick this guy up and like torture him and like and literally crush his balls until like blood is coming out, instead of just rumoring him and being like, I heard a rumor that you told me where Klaus was. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Like even if like literally in the plot, maybe she can't do it because like maybe she's mentally blocked and her abilities have changed and maybe she doesn't have access to that power anymore. But why from a storytelling level would you take away the coolest thing in the show, which is I heard a rumor? So I don't know. Anyway, lame. But that's it. That's the Umbrella Academy, okay? It wasn't as terrible as everyone else is basically saying. Overall, I think it's still decent, but an unbelievably bad ending to a show that I very much loved.